My name is Donna Thiessen, and I am the Scholarly Communication Librarian with Saskatchewan Polytechnic and the organizer of your fabulous OER Week. I'll have to just, as a note, I'm going to let you know that on our LibGuide on the Sask Polytechnic page, and I'll put the link in the chat there. There are some fabulous programs as well that are taking place at other institutions, and I'm so divided this week. It's like I'm here for this, but I also so want to attend those other webinars and the other things that are going on. Just a fabulous one this morning from eCampus Ontario, which was looking at the future of OER. So anyone with a Polytechnic, you're going to hear more about this. I'm going to be doing some really fun activities coming up with that. So you have joined Saskatchewan Polytechnic and our OER Week, and I will also put something in the chat here. I'll put that link in that goes to our information on open education resources. I'm also going to do a quick promo saying we've got 2 more presentations coming up tomorrow at noon and Thursday at noon. Tomorrow we're looking at the globalization of OER with a fellow who's actually intimately involved in that. Rory McGill from Athabasca University. And then Thursday, we have somebody talking about the development of just a fascinating resource. So take a look and consider joining our other sessions this week as well. So I want to welcome you all from the Saskatchewan Polytechnic Library. Our campuses are situated on Treaty 4 and Treaty 6 territory and the homeland of the Métis Nation. We respectfully recognize the Indigenous peoples of these lands as part of our ongoing commitment to good relations and a reconciled future, and welcome everyone to this virtual space. So today's presentation is titled Adventures in Open Education, and I really wanted to call it the meta, but I got dissuaded from doing that. But so we're going to be offering tips and integration, how to integrate a foundational topic into higher education. And we will be doing a little bit of reflection, I think, as part of this on what open means and where we're going with it. So I'm thrilled to have 2 amazing speakers today. The first one is Nina Verishagen, who is one of our faculty librarians at Saskatchewan Polytechnic, and has a very recently published OER, which I will also put a link to in the chat in just a minute. She has been working for over a year with her partner, Diane Zare, on the development of this book. They had also developed a course prior to this on disinformation, and great topic. She's not really going to be delving into the topic today, but if you would like her to come and get involved in, we'll call it public scholarship, you can certainly contact her, and maybe Nina could put her contact information up in the chat as well if anybody is interested in having her come and talk more about the actual topic of the book. Today we're going to be talking more about the development of it. The second speaker is Dr. Alex Ketchum from McGill University, and she is with the Institute for Gender, Sexuality, and Feminist Studies. She has recently published 2, not 1, but 2 open education resources. I asked her to focus today on engaging in public scholarship, a guide for feminists. Oh, there it is. She's got it. That's fabulous. And accessible communications. And we're going to be having a discussion about what she's put into her book and her studies regarding that. But we're going to start with Nina, and Nina has asked if she could do a presentation on her. So she's going to be stepping through her presentation. She's asked maybe just to hold off if you have questions, and we'll deal with those. I think what we'll do is Nina will have her presentation, then we'll have a discussion with Alex, and then there'll be a time for questions. You're welcome to throw your questions into chat anyways, and we might find a way of trying to address them because our time is probably going to be short. We got a lot to cover today.
Hi, everyone. I am joining you today from Treaty 6 territory here at our Saskatoon campus location, and I am a faculty librarian at Saskatchewan Polytechnic. So a little bit about me. I'm a librarian. Librarians do many things, I'm sure you are all aware of. One of them is instruction. So we teach workshops to students on various information literacy topics, including things like how to do research, using formatting styles, or as is the case with the resources I'm going to be speaking about today, how to evaluate online information for things like reliability, credibility, and truth. I'm starting, as Donna said, I've been working on 2 years. I'm up to 2 years now working on these open education resources, all in the concept of disinformation. So I'm starting to accept that maybe I am an expert, and I am a major millennial. I'm 35 years young, and much of my work is a result of my experiences in teaching in the post-secondary environment and learning. And for my topic specifically, encountering online information throughout most of my life. I'm going to begin today with a few definitions, just in case we have some viewers out there who are new to the world of open. So what is an open education resource? Open education resources are resources. So things like courses or textbooks, teaching materials that have an open copyright license, they are a part of the public domain. So depending on the license, they can be freely accessed, used, remixed, improved, and shared. Now I've highlighted or made pink the word freely because I wanted to make an important point, and that is that although open resources are by definition meant to be free, the creation of an open education resource is not costless. Somebody has to take the time to create the resource. And so things like grant funding become crucial in the creation of such resources. I personally dedicated about 350 hours in my projects outside of my regular job. And those are just the hours I was paid for. There have been quite a few extra hours on evenings and weekends dedicated to this project. And I'm only one small piece of the project. I have a co-lead who probably put in as many hours as me. And so that leads me to my next slide, which is It Takes a Village. The resources I'm going to discuss today were the result of a project that I co-led. My colleague Diane Zur, who was not able to make it today, is fully half of this project. We created everything and continue to do our work as a team. And along the way, we do our best to pull in as many creative individuals as we can. So if you come within my scope and you prove that you're really talented, be careful, I might grab you. But yeah, if you notice that I'm continually referring to us as we, it's because I did not complete this work alone. And I don't know, Diane might kill me for this, but I decided at the last minute to throw in a little image of her. So you might be wondering, what did we create? So we created essentially 2 open education resources. The first resource is an open course, and it has several formats, but it's always the same course. The next thing we created is an open textbook, which exists in Pressbooks. So first, let's talk about the course. The course has 2 versions, but within those versions, there's even more versions. The internal version, which is available within my academic community, so Saskatchewan Polytechnic, it is built within our LMS, Learning Management System, Brightspace. And in this version, we call it Information 100 or Info 100, Critical Evaluation of Information. And within that, we have various versions for various learners, including staff. So we have a staff PD version, we have student self-register options, and we have duplicated the course for individual classes. We also have created an open version of our course. That one is built in an open course builder called Thinkific, and it is called Disinformation Dealing with the Disaster. That version can be accessed by anybody. You don't have to be a Saskatchewan Polytechnic community member to access it. That's why I've thrown the link and the QR code in there. So please do visit it if you would like to. I've also given Donna the link to my PowerPoint presentation. So if anybody would like to utilize any of the links or resources I showed throughout this, they can. So you might be wondering, why do they have 2 different titles, even though they are the internal version and the open version are the same course? We did that on purpose. We wanted the Saskatchewan Polytechnic internal one that's built in our LMS to be a little bit more academic, and we wanted it to be a little bit more formal. We thought that that might help with uptake with faculty. And we wanted a more catchy, clickbaity title for our open resource. So that is why we decided to name the two different names. The second resource that we created is our textbook. You can see I've got a little snippet there that I pulled directly from the book description that tells you exactly sort of what it's about. The textbook was made public 4 days ago. So we have not had any opportunity to share or integrate it yet. Basically, I've shared it with my parents. It follows the same structure and subject matter as the course, but it expands on everything and provides more context and more examples. Again, there is a QR code and a link there. So if you want to be the third and fourth people to take a look at the book, please go ahead and scan that code. So I'm just jumping back to the course again, because what my talk today is going to focus on is the internal version of the course. This resource is what we have experienced the most success with due to some of the processes that we embarked on throughout its creation and also the popularity of the subject matter. So that's kind of what I'm going to be talking to you about today, is how did we manage to get people to actually use Info 100 throughout our institution. So we have had a successful integration. So before I talk about how we did it, I'll just show you the successes that we have already had. We have faculty interest and we have student completions that we can celebrate already. Enrollment requests for the PD version of the course, we have had 85 faculty and staff request to be registered. And it's really, I think, an important point to note that approximately 60 of these were independently sought, i.e. we didn't promote it to staff members. They weren't a part of our immediate collegial circle. Word just sort of spread and people started asking like, hey, I've heard about this course, can I take it? And so we had to actually create a professional development version for staff that was separate from the student version so that they could take it as well. We also did a faculty session to promote the course and our expertise, at which we had 18 live attendees. And since we have had 90 views, this happened about a year ago. And we have had several unfulfilled requests to enroll classes. So we have a lot of instructors who want their courses to be taking this, but we haven't been able to fulfill the requests yet. And we have our open course, the one that's built in Thinkific, has actually been integrated into some micro-credentials at Saskatchewan Polytechnic. Now, in terms of student completion, 3 programs have made our mini course, Info 100, a requirement of their class curriculum. So 2 courses have made it pass-fail. So students are expected to complete the mini course. And if they complete it, they are considered to have passed it. And that's wonderful. We're very excited about that. And one of the programs that has incorporated it into their offering has actually made it 30% of their entire course mark. So that is a huge, huge deal. And we're very, very proud of this. By the end of this month, 80 students will have completed the course as a requirement. So not because they want to or because they're interested, even though I'm sure they will be. It has been as a requirement. So yeah, we're really excited about this. And so I'm going to talk to you sort of about how we achieved this. How did we do it? How did 2 librarians convince academic faculty to integrate something we created as required curriculum? This is no small feat. We attribute our success to 2 things. The subject matter, disinformation. It's just a very hot topic right now. Everybody's interested in it. And then some of the steps that we took throughout our creation process definitely gave us a leg up. So let's break them down a little bit. So what is Info 100, critical evaluation of information, about? As you've seen the word disinformation over and over again, but essentially what the course covers is finding and evaluating online information, deciding what information to use and for what, understanding online information creation and sharing, and there is a special focus on the topic of disinformation. Here is a definition of disinformation. This is actually pulled directly from our textbook. We have found that using the term disinformation is a huge draw for any audience. So although we attribute a lot of the success to, like the work that we've done, we also are aware that you kind of use that word and offer it out to people, and they kind of run at you and are really interested in it because it is such an urgent issue that we are dealing with as a society today. Just to give you a little idea, here's a snapshot of the course framework. We follow 5 topics in our course, the one that is integrated within our institution, and this is what they are. Again, really kind of intriguing topic subject matter. So that's the first one, is we attribute it to just the concept itself and what we're covering. But we also attribute our success to the process that we underwent. So we went through essentially 6 different phases when we created our open education resource. We identified a need, we applied for funding, we sought stakeholder input, and then we created the resource, tested it, and promoted it. I'm going to break those down individually. So to begin, identifying a need. In addition to disinformation being a really hot topic today, after working in our environment, which is, at a polytechnic institution where you have students who need to do research assignments and they need to find reliable information in order to support evidence in their research papers, we saw that there was a hunger for more education in this area. And we felt that we were in the best position to provide it. You can see this quote here states that information professionals and librarians have positioned themselves at the front lines of the information war, and I can't agree more. So working in the post-secondary and for secondary environment, we are often invited to deliver workshops on evaluating online information. And as we have continued to do this, since really librarians have been doing this since the internet was released, the issue of information disorder and things like misinformation and disinformation have continued to get worse, while people's ability to evaluate them has been decreasing as the systems become more sophisticated, the systems that are trying to manipulate us. So we were looking for a way to provide more robust learning in this area, and we envisioned our course. We also had many faculty actually requesting like more. We need more for our students. They're just not getting it. And I would say that it's not just students who aren't getting it. We all struggle with understanding what's going on in the information environment. So once we decided what we wanted to create, we decided we needed to apply for funding. We knew that we could not complete the project off the side of our desks. We needed incentive, and we needed to be able to schedule time to do the work. We received funding to get additional days and be paid for them. So basically that means any day that we weren't working in our normal job, we could work on this project and get paid for it. At other institutions, it might be more like you get time in lieu, like some of your work time goes away and then you're able to work on it. Ours looked like extra days. I am 100% certain that if we had not had this funding for both projects, that the idea would still be in a dream phase. Like, I do not think we would have achieved either of the things that we have up until this point. So funding is really important in my opinion. The next thing that we did, well, actually, I would say it's kind of the first thing we did because it was the thing we did after we got our funding and had the main idea, is we very purposefully sought stakeholder input. We wanted to know what instructors really wanted, and we wanted to know how we could create something that they would actually use. We didn't want to create something that wouldn't be used. So we invited faculty members who are our colleagues, as many as we could think of, and from as many different disciplines and departments that we could think of, to have focus group discussions with us. This was before we had done any creation at all. We kind of still just had this pie in the sky idea at this time. And we understood that if they didn't have a stake in the project, they probably weren't going to use it. And a really important note is that many of the people who were in our focus groups are the people who are now championing this for us and who are currently embedding the course into their curriculum. Here are the questions that we asked, which might be helpful for somebody who's looking to create something like an open education resource. From these questions, lots of organic conversations and ideas emerged. What we were surprised to learn, though, was that The topic was of such concern to faculty members that they essentially told us to make it however long we need it to be, make it whatever format we need it to be, which was really encouraging, but also like kind of intimidating. We had to sort of, go back to the drawing board and decide how long we could make the course based on how much money and time we had for the project. The final two questions here, though, are the most important, as they led us to discover that there were actual learning outcomes that already existed within Saskatchewan Polytechnic courses that our work could provide learning materials for. And I have one example here for you. So this is two learning outcomes that were shared with us from one of our instructors that as soon as we saw them, we thought, perfect, we can help cover these learning outcomes by embedding our course into your curriculum. And the instructors shared with us that subject matter like this is something that they're expected to teach, but in some cases they don't feel equipped to do so. So having us offer to create something was very well received and would fill a gap for them. So after we did that, we needed to actually create the OER. And creating an OER, I've learned over the last 2 years, is managing a project. So for the course, we spent a summer and a few extra days throughout the fall semester creating it. It was arduous. We were not yet subject matter experts. We did everything from researching to developing curriculum to course creation, including graphics, video, audio files, literally everything. And we learned quickly that we should have contracted some tasks out. If we could have gone back in time, we would have applied for more funding and hired a research assistant and probably a course designer to help us along the way. We did learn our lesson though. With our second project, the textbook, we applied for way more money and we were able to hire a research assistant who was a valuable addition, and other professionals were also recruited to help us with this project, which went quite a bit more smooth. So think of it like a project, don't take it all on yourself is my point here. I also think it's really important to point out that you need to think about providing options if you're trying to integrate an open education resource into your institution. So once the course was complete, we were thinking like, how do we get instructors to use this? What do we offer to them? And we created this instructor guide. Prior to this project, I had only thought about open as, something like a MOOC, like a massive online open course, something that anybody in the world can take. But when we started creating this instructor guide, that's when I started to see the concepts of using, remixing, improving, and sharing as open concepts that made a lot more sense to me. And it's really embodied in the instructor guide, because you can see from this that we give them options. You can literally take our course. You can have students do the course. You can pull pieces from it and create your own PowerPoints and assignments, whatever you want. Just give us attribution was all that we asked for. This guide is one of the first things that we handed to the instructor who gave us permission to pilot the course within her class. So the next step was we tested it. We sought feedback from colleagues in the library and from those who participated in the focus groups. We did this before we opened it up to students. We got a lot of great feedback, and the best thing is that we continue to build those champions within the institution who, once they started seeing the course more and more, were even more interested in using it in their classes. And then we did a pilot project. We opened up the class to 18 students in the Library and Information Technology program. They were able to see how the content could help them in their future workplace. And we asked for feedback and we implemented it to make the experience more meaningful. Of course, we learned a lot from those students, and it was a wonderful thing. And then we promoted it. So basically, we felt like we were ready to go with it after that. We promoted the course in several ways. Much of it had already been done through the focus groups and seeking feedback. We'd already built champions throughout a lot of the consultation phase, and we already had several instructors requesting to use it. So when fall semester hit, there were instructors who immediately adopted it and started requiring their students to complete it. We also hosted some PD sessions, which I alluded to a little bit earlier. And as far as external promotion goes, I actually have this on a separate slide. We have done some conferences, and talks like this one are what we're hoping will help us to sort of get our resources out there. I'm happy to report that we will be conducting an in-service session for librarians at the Saskatchewan Health Region in the spring. So word is spreading, and our resources are being used, and that's how we achieved our success. So if you do want to access our materials, I have everything here on this slide for you. I'm hoping that Donna has been sharing some links as I've been talking, or will afterwards. You can contact me or Diane. And that is the conclusion of my piece. I just have a very lengthy reference page for you to stare at now, and I'll stop my share. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Nina. That was great. I really appreciate your focus on what you learned from the project as you went through, and you know, the value of remixing and of sort of initiating your promotion early and using your focus groups and all those sorts of things. We've got some people within the group today that are working on OER, so I think this presentation will have been super helpful for them in terms of thinking about their own projects. So thanks a lot. I really appreciate that. If you have questions for Nina at this point, I'm going to suggest maybe you would want to either put it into the chat, or you can private message her and she could probably answer. She's off the hook for the next little bit. And so she's available to answer any particular questions that you might have if there was something that came up. So we're going to shift our focus a little bit here, and we're going to move into an interview format with Alex. And so, oh my goodness, there is so much that I have that I want to ask you, Alex.
Amazing.
I'm going to start with, though, I mentioned to Alex that one of my projects for 2023 is I'm taking a few minutes every morning just to read a little bit. And so this morning I actually finished a book by Billy Ray Balcourt called A Minor Course, which everybody should read this. It is amazing, prairie-based, all about scholarly communication. Well, not really, but that's certainly part of it, and an amazing book. In it, his main character is an Indigenous gay man who is pursuing a doctoral degree, and he's really struggling with the idea of academia and real life and how these two can start to fit together, and how he can mediate this scholarly pursuit while he's still participating in a colonial structure as well, which in academia. So in trying to find his voice. So I'm wondering if maybe this character should have been advised to read your book, engage in public scholarship, and if that might have solved some of the issues that he's dealing with.
Well, I think Billy Ray Balcourt's work, I've been reading his stuff for years. I haven't read that text in particular, but he's really written about how he's tried to balance academic writing with writing fiction, and how that actually kind of replenished his ability to then like jump back into scholarly writing, and also kind of challenging some of those dynamics. So my book does speak about how reinvigorating doing other forms of public scholarship can make your academic work. So I do think there's some overlap, but also Billy Ray is like a wealth of knowledge, and I'm sure has thought about these ideas quite a bit.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about your background? And I think initially it might be good to start with how you came to publish in the open format.
Definitely. So I have a PhD in history, but I've been working in the feminist gender studies program at McGill, or programs at McGill, for many years, but have been in my current position for the last 5 years. And I've always had a commitment to sharing whatever I was learning in school or researching with communities outside of the academic world. My mom left school at age 15. And so even growing up, I always wanted to share what I was reading in class or what I was writing in my studies. So I've always had that kind of commitment. And I've always had an interest in kind of writing across different formats as well. And for me, the fact that, I'm at an institution that's taxpayer funded, and we're getting all this kind of public support, but I didn't want my work to be closed off. I wanted people to be able to know what was going on within the institution, and for people to be able to read it, and it not just to be stuck behind closed off paywalled academic journal articles. And so I had that commitment. I also was really involved. I founded and continue to run a speaker series called Disrupting Disruptions, the Feminist and Accessible Publishing Communications and Tech Speaker Workshop Series. I started in January 2019, and tomorrow night will actually be our 76th event. So it's been, there's been a lot of events, but with that, everything has been free, open to the public. Now they're virtual or hybrid events also. But even with that idea of being open to the public, it's like, okay, people can come, but will they come? What's on a university campus and stuff like that. So I was kind of trying to understand these kinds of barriers. And the other thing is that the series is funded with a SHRC connection grant. And for those of you who have ever done those, you have to get funding at least 50% from other partners. And I approached Concordia University Press if they wanted to give like $200 towards it, because that would lead to $400 of SHRC funding. And I basically did this in patchwork to try to get up to like $20,000. But when I approached them, they said, we don't have money to give you towards the series, but do you want to write a book for us about the work you've been doing about this like publicly accessible scholarship? And I was like, yeah, I want to, but if I'm going to write this kind of book, it has to be open access. And they're like, oh, that's our commitment. We want all of our books to be open access. So working with a press that was interested in this topic about that touches on open access or deals with open access, was like a big reason why that book was open access, and which like kind of furthered my commitment even more to like open educational resources.
So I think what you're saying is the idea of public scholarship came first.
Yeah, I think so. Well, the thing for me is that open access and open educational resources and open data, these movements are all components of public scholarship, but they're not all of public scholarship, because even if we put something online freely available, it's still not going to be accessible to everybody. And as Nina was talking about, right, there's going to be differences in what kind of formats people are going to want to engage with this material on. And something else I really appreciated that Nina was talking about was also, to do this kind of work, that's not accessible for all scholars, right? Like, because of the kind of labor required, because of the amount of funds required to do this stuff, it can be really intensive work. And if your institution doesn't support that, that creates another kind of barrier.
Right. So what are some of the challenges that you found, since you didn't start off with the idea that you were developing an open education resource? You thought you were doing a speaker series, and this came out of the funding question. So what were some of the challenges that you faced when you started to developing the OER?
Yeah, I think in terms of like when I was thinking about the format itself, it wasn't so different in thinking about if I were writing this as a kind of traditional scholarly monograph versus making it open. That wasn't really the division for me. Part of it has to do with, and I think this really depends on people's kind of position and the departments and the institutions they're in, but there are some like biases or negative associations people have with the idea of openness. I think because there's predatory online journals that are kind of scam based, some people have this misunderstanding thinking that open access means that it's like not as valuable, that things aren't peer reviewed, that things aren't of high educational standards. So some of that has been trying to combat those misassumptions, those misunderstandings. So I think that's one of the challenges. I think another challenge is the kind of labor dynamics of this. So in terms of, I'm not tenure track, I didn't get course release for working on this book. I got funding towards making the book open access, but not funding for my own labor. And that's something I discuss in the book, that there's a lot of benefits to creating open work. And I think it's really, really important. But if institutions are really committed to having open resources, they also need to support that labor.
So you had taught, yeah, and I mean, I think at Sask Polytechnic we've been able to do that, which has been a real benefit. We've had funding, which has allowed us to give some of that release time to our faculty. Although I think it always comes down to release time from what? it's still your own time, and you may be paid for it, but you're always giving something up
Mhm.
to engage in this kind of scholarship. And I mean, whatever, there's always a sacrifice that's going to be involved in that. So you did mention in your book, I've got a couple quotes here, which I didn't tell you. But you did say public scholarship is a labor issue, and the cost of public scholarship are greater for the scholars that are already marginalized
Mhm.
in the academy. So I wonder if you wanted to say a couple things about that.
Yeah, for sure. So this is in a few different senses of marginalized. So one is people who aren't tenure track, but also a lot of the kind of work that we do when we make it more open, that also involves the kind of circulation, the kind of promotion, which is oftentimes done on social media or on radio or newspapers, right? And so that makes you more public facing. And when you're public facing, especially online, but not restricted to that, you're also more likely to encounter trolling, doxing, cyberbullying. And that is a greater risk, especially for women, queer people, people of color, trans folks, non-binary folks, people at the intersections of those identities, or people who are working on topics related to those identities. And so that itself can also be another kind of barrier to doing that work. Plus, also scholars with marginalized identities are often facing higher service loads within the academy. They're oftentimes teaching courses that are covering emotionally heavy topics. And so all of these can just kind of compound into added labor. And many universities, I talk about in the book, but I ran a study in the summer of 2020, just seeing my research team and I, we contacted every Canadian university and we asked them, and we looked at their websites to see what their media relations offices were offering. And we also contacted those offices and we asked them, what kind of supports do you have for scholars if they're trolled or doxed? And basically nothing was what they had. There was one university that had one mention on a website, another one that had one document, but most of the offices said they hadn't even thought about it. And so that itself is kind of another barrier and challenge for doing this work. But I don't also want to focus only on the challenges, but they really are there. And I think that also limits the kind of resources and open books and open data sets and stuff that we'll actually be able to have because of those risks.
So I wonder if you want to just define trolling and doxing.
Yeah, for sure. So basically there are different forms of cyberbullying to different degrees. So there's one form of trolling where people are just kind of trying to irritate you, or they'll write kind of goofy things, but to try to get on your nerves. Doxing is far more serious. So that can involve someone finding your home address and posting it online, making death threats, making threats of violence at you in different manners through online, or mailing things to your house. So that is something that some scholars have encountered in doing this open work. And I mean, there's ways also, and I talk about this in the book, of even though I think this is really an institutional and structural issue that universities should really have plans to support their scholars, in places like UMass Amherst actually do. There's also ways to kind of protect yourself a bit as a scholar in order to have certain accounts if you need to lock them down right away, if you start to get trolled a lot, or different ways to have kind of like a barrier to your identity. So maybe having social media accounts that are like the project name rather than your personal name can be a way of kind of promoting that work without people coming after you. But there are all these kinds of questions of safety that scholars have to navigate.
Right. So I mean, it's one of the challenges, really, you know, with the open, like we have a certain definition, I think, that for open, and it's related to the scholarly publication and kind of a reaction to that. But when we start to move into that sphere, then you're starting to identify some of the other aspects that are going to come out. Because I mean, I guess the advantage of academic publishing has been, well, it's both the well, not much of a blessing, a little bit, but mostly a curse. but that it is protected, and you are protected, and there is a mediation between you and the public. But when we move into public scholarship, then we're moving into a different sphere where we're opening ourselves to basically what's happening on the internet, I guess.
Yeah. But at the same time, right, it also means that you're getting, like, the positive side of this too, is that you're also getting feedback from folks who might not have engaged with your work otherwise, right? You're getting new kinds of questions about your scholarship and the things that you're creating. It really can inform the work and make it better. You know, it's even, I know we're focusing on the like resources themselves, but like a similar parallel when I talk about my work at public libraries or bookstores or other spaces, even sometimes I've spoken at like music venues, the kinds of questions I get about my scholarship are really different than when I speak at an academic conference. And it's not that one is better than the other, but it informs the work differently. And I think, right, like, so that's what's kind of a reason to continue to do this, even with the challenge. And I think as we're talking about these challenges of promoting open education resources as well, I do think actually in some ways it makes it easier to share the work outside of the kind of risks of trolling and doxing. But that can happen even if you're promoting a closed academic resource too, right? People are promoting a monograph only available in hardcover. But one of the other things that can be helpful is that, you know, Nina was talking about courses at the university, like professors are able to use this content more readily in their courses, right? You already have resources available for professors. They can put the resource on a syllabus and not worry about students not being able to pay for a textbook, right? Similarly, with my books, I find that I can promote the work, which I care about. I want people to read. That's why I've spent years of my life on these projects. But I know some of my colleagues are more interested in putting them on their syllabi because they can share them with their students and not worry about those kinds of financial and class barriers in the same way. So in some ways, it actually makes it easier to promote the book, because also when I'm talking about it, I don't feel like I'm always trying to sell people on something, right? I'm just saying like, hey, look, there's this resource that you can use. You can use it as it's useful for you. And, you know, it has those kind of Creative Commons licenses that Nina was discussing.
So I also wanted to ask you, in your book, you had talked about how there is sort of one size fits all mentality in terms of publishing. And so I know you had asked us before we even started this presentation today about adding in closed captioning, and we're all like, oh, so we've struggled a little bit, and we haven't been able to do that for the live presentation, but we will add it to the recording. But I wonder if you wanted to talk a little bit about accessibility and the advantages that it can provide in terms of that.
Yeah, definitely. So one of the things I do in my book is I talk about what do we mean by accessibility, right? So there's the work by disability scholars, disability justice scholars, who really point to, right, all of the different ways when we're thinking about physical disabilities, like mental and so forth. But also when we're thinking about accessibility, it's not just within this disability framework, but it's also about class barriers, the kind of language that we use. If we're using jargon, if we're creating a resource in English, it won't be accessible to people who don't speak English, right? Don't read English. Not everyone is able to read. If we're doing everything online, people who don't have good broadband access won't have access to the stuff. So there's a lot of different ways that we have barriers to access. And I think that there's never going to be a one size fits all fix, right? Nothing you do will be fully accessible to everyone, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't try to increase the accessibility. You just need to be really specific about the communities that you're trying to reach, right? So if you're trying to have an open educational resource that will be read across Canada, right? It'll be important to have it in multiple languages, right? Because not everyone will have access to English, or at least be able to have some kind of way that people can use a good version of a translating app with it. There's different ways that we can think about accessibility in terms of where we're sharing our links, right? So if we're like trying to link up with different organizations to tell people about this, well, maybe it's useful to also tell people about your educational resource on a podcast or a series of different like media, because not everyone might be in your same network, right? So there's lots of different ways that we can think about accessibility. So I want to both credit the work of amazing disability rights activists and also think about that and beyond that as well.
So I have a couple different ways that I think we can go with this, but I think this might be a good chance to talk a little bit about your toolkits.
Yeah.
They're amazing. So
Thank you.
tell us what you've got in the book. Tell us about the toolkits.
Okay, so the book is in two parts. So the first part of the book is kind of more of the theoretical and talking about the benefits and the challenges. The second half of the book is called Toolkits. And this you can really read in any order, because I want to encourage people to try out different forms of public scholarship. So part of it is talking about open access, but part of it's also talking about other ways you can share your work. And if you're thinking, oh, I want to do a podcast, there's resources for podcasting, resources for how to build a website. It doesn't have to resources for how to do a graphic novel or comics, but also doesn't have to be something that you're just creating fresh from the ground up. I think as scholars, we oftentimes feel this need that we have to become automatic experts in the thing, and we have to do it by ourselves. Some fields might be thinking a bit more collaboratively, but especially with my humanities and social science training, that is really the kind of mindset that I was kind of brought up in. And I want to encourage folks to also think about, well, maybe you don't want to create a whole blog or website, but maybe you can write a guest post on someone else's or do a guest talk on someone else's podcast. There's also resources in how to work with journalists, how to prepare for interviews, how to write op-eds. I have toolkits on how to create apps. I also cite a lot of work from other scholars who have thought creatively about how to share their work, people who have created hip hop albums, people who have created different artworks, plays, etc. Right? So many different ways. And the point of the toolkit section isn't to make you feel like you overwhelmed and that you have to do it all, but instead, here's some really practical advice and options. And here's examples of folks who have done this and that it's possible. And the point of this section is to really invite you in and encourage you to experiment. And also something I try to do in the book is center this idea of joy and fun, because for many of this will be work in addition to our other work responsibilities. Hopefully we have institutions that support this work, see it as valuable and valid scholarship that can count towards hiring, tenure, promotion, all of those types of things. But for many of us, it will be working in institutions that see this as an additional thing we do. So especially in that case, what will bring us joy? What is exciting to us? And so the toolkits kind of help folks navigate what kind of resources would be useful for them to kind of bring forward that joy.
I'm seeing Nina nod. A lot of what you've been saying. I can't wait for Disinformation, the graphic novel, to come out. I think that'll be great. And I think, part of this is that you get involved in this because of the joy, because of the interest and the passion. And it seems to me that what you're suggesting in terms of the toolkits is a way of really running with that passion. You've done the hard work, you've done the research, the other bits that maybe you didn't want to do. So now what can you do that would actually bring this alive and make it more real as you go forward?
Definitely. And there's different points in your scholarship that you can start to think about the kind of public versions, right? So there's sometimes it's at the end, you've done all your research and then you share your findings at the end, but there's also ways to kind of engage earlier on in the process, even in developing your research questions.
So I did want to bring this up, and I'm wondering right now, I think we're still in relatively early days in terms of open in whatever form that it's going to take. And the norm is still scholarly publishing. So I'm wondering if you're seeing any changes that are taking place in that are indicating where that shift is going to happen or where we're going with that.
Yeah, I think so. There's definitely a lot of scholars who are doing this work. But again, for many of them, they're seeing this as kind of a thing that's off the side of their desk. And Juan Pablo Alperin at Simon Fraser University has actually done the research to track how different forms of scholarship are being used in tenure, promotion, hiring, and all of that. And so far, not super encouraging, but I'm hoping that as universities continue to try to show their relevancy to the public, that maybe there will be kind of new systems of evaluation. But I do think that there are a lot of scholars who are at least experimenting with this and testing it out. There's also challenges because academic presses, university presses are having a really difficult time financially right now. So I do think that there might be some move away from the kind of single authored monograph format. And there might be a few more creative ways to think through this. Not just like, I love writing single authored monographs. I've done it twice. I'm working on a third book, but I think that there's a lot more exciting ways to also communicate research too, right? That we shouldn't all have to do the same exact thing. And I think there are some universities that are really starting to explore that more and think creatively.
So when I was looking at your book again, one of the things that I was thinking about, maybe going back to the toolkits and thinking about what you had. And I mean, we tend to think about, there's sort of the writing process and then the promotion process. You kind of define this in terms of knowledge dissemination. So I wanted to maybe provide some advice in terms of the differentiation between how we understand promotion and knowledge dissemination.
Yeah, for sure. I think that they have different connotations of the term. I think there's a bit more of this kind of sense of with promotion that it's like you're kind of selling a finished good, whereas knowledge dissemination has this kind of sense of like sharing the work at different points in the process. That's not necessarily when it's completely done. So for example, my other book is about my doctoral project, which was a history of feminist restaurants, cafes, and coffee houses from 1972 to 2022. It's a very different project. But early on in that project, back in 2013, I created a website and I had maps, my initial directories, and I was sharing those, asking for people to tell me what was I missing, were there spaces they knew of that I hadn't found, right? And so that was disseminating the knowledge that I had already kind of found, created, worked on, but also it was earlier on in the project, right? It wasn't promoting a finished project. And I also think, right, all of these terms have really different connotations of the relationship of the researcher to the public. So in terms of like, I see public scholarship as this kind of larger umbrella term. Then we have things like science communication, research communication, knowledge dissemination, right? Some of it really has like the researcher is like the one with all the knowledge and shares it, where some have this kind of sense of more collaboration. And promotion has the sense of you do it when it's over. And it's not saying that these are bad things or good things. They're just thinking through at different points in the process.
I think I'm going to give you one last question. We're going to wrap. We're starting to lose a few people. So what is the future of open? And I guess that's what future would you like to see? Where do you want to see this go?
Yeah, I would love to see, I mean, this is something I'd love to see about kind of changing norms around a scholarly publication. And for one, I would like to see a changing model of academic journals, for example. So right now it's run by a few major companies that are making a huge profit. And even when they have open options, oftentimes scholars are having to pay hundreds or thousands of dollars. I believe Nature now charges $7,000 for a piece to go open, which is wild and inappropriate because it's not as if the authors are making money on their work. I would like to see more kind of models of academic journals being run through different kind of university consortiums, like using some of their budgets to actually fund the overall operations of the journal. And so that would also reduce some of those those large budgets that are required from university libraries in order to just pay these really high access fees. So that's one thing I would like to see change. I wish that there would be kind of more education on the different ways to make your work open. So for example, many grants now require that you have an open version of your scholarship. Like it's part of kind of Canadian Tri-Council grants and so forth. But I don't think everyone realizes that you can put a version of your work into your scholarly e-repository, and that meets the requirement of the grant. That will pop up on Google Scholar, for example, when people are searching for the piece, it'll pop in like the first or second thing, but people still cite the original piece. So there's ways to like share the work that still meet the copyright requirements of the journal, meet your grant without lining the pockets of a few of these for-profit companies. I also wish there were more discussion earlier on in graduate training about what it means to communicate your research. I think many graduate programs still train students in that like single thing, like you want to get your name in a big journal, but you don't actually think about, okay, well, what will be the barriers for people being able to read this? Like, how will people be able to like learn about this information? It wasn't until way later on that I learned about Sherpa Romeo as a resource to just kind of see the copyright of the journal before I even submitted, right? So I think there's a lot of kind of shifting things that we need to do in graduate training around these ideas of prestige versus who actually can read our work, and just a lot more kind of greater understanding that open access speaks to the ability for people to read it. It doesn't speak to like the quality of the research. And I think we need to kind of overcome that misunderstanding. So yeah, I mean, I could keep going on and on about like how all scholarly monographs were open.
We have much more. We just opened the discussion, but it's been great. Thank you so much for this. I'm going to, I posted my email contact in the chat, and I know there were some people that joined us today, and I didn't have your contact information. So if you want the resources from this, I'm going to be sending out some information to anybody. Just you can contact me directly and I will follow up with you. For those people that are left, I have a poll I'm going to launch here. And can you see that?
Yeah, I can see it.
Excellent. Okay, so I'm going to give you a couple minutes to complete the poll. There's just a couple questions on there, getting some feedback on this. And if you do have questions for Alex or Nina, and you could hang out for a few minutes, then we can carry on with the discussion for a bit here. I'll just give you a chance to respond to the questions in the poll.
While people are doing the poll, Nina, I have a question for you actually. Can I ask?
Yes.
I was wondering why you chose Thinkific for the open version of the course and why you chose the platform you did for the press books for the book. I always like to hear why people made the certain platform choices that they did.
So if I'd had more time to talk, I would have talked about the several other barriers that I came up against. And one of them was, you were actually just talking about it. We have to make this open. How do we do that? Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until we were like 8 months into the project. I was actually last year at Open Education Week that I met another open proponent champion who I said to him, I have not found an open course builder that's free. What do I do? How do I do this? And he said, have you heard of Thinkific? And literally that was like one of those moments. I couldn't believe it existed. It's a thing you can actually build a course in for free. You don't have to charge people to take the course. I don't even know if any others exist. I was unable to find them.
Okay.
Do others exist?
I don't know, because I actually didn't talk about building open courses in the book. I talked about like open book ones, but not about open courses.
Well, this is one of the other issues within the institution is it's like, yeah, create open sources, but figure out how to make them open.
Yeah.
And then to answer your question about press books is we have press books here. So I was to utilize it, which was wonderful and so much easier than searching for a platform to create it in.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, like while creating my book, it was really like some sources I knew about because it's like, oh, I'd met this person had a conference or, oh, I had like heard of this. And then I did a lot of searching to speak to like other kind of tools that were possible. But I really want to save people the trouble of having to find them all themselves. But yeah, they're really,
word of mouth.
you know,
Yeah, it was
people
word of
like-
mouth.
I agree with you that many universities assume that it's something that doesn't require like funding and resources and trainings. It's like many of us trained for a lot of years to learn our research methods or, you know, how to do this work, but then it's kind of assumed that you can just pick it up right away. And I'm not saying that in order to discourage folks from trying it. I really want people to try it, but also, you know, there will be some things that you have to learn or you need to work with others. Have we gotten any questions?
Does anyone else have any questions that they want to pose to Nina and Alex? We don't have to end. We can just carry on and on.
But yeah, with Pressbooks, I also know about like oh my gosh, what's it called right now? I just found it again. Oh no, Rebus, the Rebus Foundation also offers another platform for open monographs and textbooks as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then like for my books, we have them built on Manifold. But that's like something the Concordia University Library chose to have. And then what's nice about that is that you can embed like audio and video and stuff into it.
Well, Thinkific is great because yeah, it's actually, I found it better than Brightspace, which is our LMS in terms of how appealing it is for the user, I guess. So yeah, I highly recommend it. What was I going to say? I was very emphatic though that I wasn't creating a PDF and sharing it and that was going to be open. I was like, no, I'm creating a course that people can take that is interactive. So we searched and searched. Yeah,
for sure. And it looks really good. Like I really, I just started like navigating through it. It looks great.
Awesome.
Oh, it looks like there's, oh yeah. Oh, in order to find one that someone already published. Is that your question, Austin? To find one that someone's already made or that you want to make yourself?
I think an existing one that already exists.
Okay. Austin, I would suggest contacting me. I posted my email earlier, and that's part of my role is to support people within the institution to find resources that might work for them. So you follow up with me, send me an email, and we'll set up an appointment and see what we can find. Absolutely. That's a big question, but yeah, we'll work on that. We've got some solutions for that. So great, thank you. So our poll, we had 8 out of 8 people that responded to it that said they would attend another session and that they really enjoyed today's presentation. So thanks so much, both. This was great. This was really fun.
Thank you. You can find me on Twitter, even though Twitter's, you know, what Twitter is right now, but Ketchum 22, and I'm really easy to find online on my website and stuff if people have other questions. So.
We had to write a whole extra page in our book when Elon Musk bought Twitter.
Yes, I can imagine.
Maybe think of that. Anyway.
Exactly. But I'm still findable there for now to be determined.
Awesome.
Well, so lovely to meet you both. And Nina, I really enjoyed your presentation. It was great.
Yeah, you too. I'm going to take a look at your work. So, and thanks for inviting me, Donna.
Cool. Thanks.
Great. Well, thanks so much, everybody. And
thank you.
We'll wrap up. So thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.